Test, test. Garrett, how do we sound? Good? All right. We're in action. I'd like to invite everybody over to the auditorium. We're going to get this party started. Hello, can you hear me over here? Awesome, thank you.
Check, check, check.
There we go.
I am. Here I am.
Now the audio sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Tonight's actually all about you. It's power to the people. We couldn't do what we are doing here today without you guys. So big shout out to you guys. Round of applause. Let's go. Thank you so much.
Power to the people. Does this work? Okay.
So, do you want to
I'll
do
do
intros?
some
Yeah.
intros really quick. So, welcome to Edge. I know I see a lot of familiar faces, so thank you for being here. Like Kevin said, this is all about everybody, not just us. So, yeah, at Edge, it's a mobile application where you can buy, sell, and trade crypto, all of our favorite things, all while holding your own keys. We think that's really important, as I'm sure we will hear from Paul tonight. We do have some job openings at Edge. We have a senior front-end engineer position. We also have a financial analyst position. And we are opening up a couple summer internships. So if any of those sound like something you would like to do or someone you know, come contact me after the program. Lastly, we do have our help desk over in the conference room. So Michael will go ahead and be over there at the end of the night. He does it all. He's the MVP, honestly. And we have it downstairs at Portal Coffee every Thursday. So if you want to ask questions about Edge or crypto in general, we really want to just provide everyone a in-person support where you can go talk to someone face-to-face. Yeah, without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Kevin.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madison. Yay. Again, thank you so much for everyone being here tonight. I would briefly like to just do some introductions for my panelists, let you guys know a little bit more about who they are, what they are building, and how we're changing the world. So why don't we just go ahead and go down the line, starting with Paul here.
Hi everybody, my name is Paul Puey. I'm CEO and co-founder of Edge. We are building, as Madison had mentioned, a self-custody app that lets you buy, sell, and trade crypto while holding your own private keys. Key differentiator, if you've already used self-custody applications, is that the key management is much simplified. We like to call this a seedless application. No having to write down seeds, mnemonics, phrases, random letters and numbers. You just create what feels like a normal account. We're trying to bridge that gap between the Web3 cryptocurrency world and what everyone else has been using over the past several decades in technology and cloud computing and basic applications. So definitely give it a try, edge.app. Thanks a lot.
Heck yeah. Bobby?
My name is Bobby Petersen, head of growth at permission.io. We're building out the world's first crypto rewards ad platform. So we're leading the way in Web3 advertising, in which consumers are finally going to get their cut of the advertising model for sharing their data and engaging with brands. So as an individual, interacts with an ad or opts in to engage with a brand, they get compensated in our cryptocurrency, which is ASK. And so the brand for us is ask permission. You may have heard Tim Cook use that phrase often when talking about the new iOS update, which is that brands must now ask permission from their users. So what we're doing is we're building that out. And so we're enabling individuals to earn from their data rather than big tech.
Awesome. Thank you, Bobby. Art?
I'm Arie Trouw. I'm the founder of XY Labs and co-founder of XYO Network. Our technology, XYO, what it does basically is it's a reality oracle. So the idea is to bind reality with the virtual world that's out there. And so in both Web2 and Web3 situations, we can actually divine what's out in the world through various users or sensors, and then answer questions that are in the virtual world. So you can trigger an event, for example, in a smart contract or in an API service. We have an app also called Coin, and Coin is basically our primary front end for users who want to be part of our network and want to provide data for the network to be able to get these answers and be monetized, or to monetize their own data as well, kind of similar to you guys, where the people's right to have their own value for their data. So Coin right now is about 4 million downloads. We're probably one of the largest crypto networks from that standpoint, where those are all nodes. And probably one of the easiest ways for a person to get involved with crypto without actually having to pull out their wallet and go and buy crypto. And they can kind of dabble and get familiar with it in a very easy way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to have these guys join us up here, building out the communities. Obviously, it's all about you, but what we're trying to do is give you back more power to you in the same sense of it being digital identity, digital assets, ownership, etc. Interactions with the web, Web3. Great. So, guys, I really wanted to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about your users? Maybe the backgrounds that they come from. However, free-flowing conversation, totally okay.
Paul, you go ahead and start. I think that makes sense.
Got it. Okay, so our user base, definitely people that care about privacy, care about freedom. We tend to be pretty popular within the libertarian anarchist community because being self-custody really enables a lot of the ideals that community, which by and large also resonates with the reason why Bitcoin was built in the first place. So we were one of the first apps to incorporate privacy coins such as Monero. And more recently Zcash in full privacy mode, because that is a coin that has kind of two modes, kind of the Bitcoin mode where things are very transparent versus private. So given our focus, we tend to appeal to those type of communities, people that want autonomy, that want to hold their own funds, want elevated level of privacy, which cryptocurrency helps, but it doesn't guarantee. And that freedom to be able to transact anywhere in the world. And so it's a lot of the ideals that were initially there as part of why Bitcoin was built. But of course, people get into it for various different reasons, especially as the industry has expanded. But we find that our user base, generally speaking, resonates with those type of ideals and those communities.
Yeah, so with us, we've had quite a bit of evolution over the years. Permission, in the early days, we attracted the crypto hunters from around the world, people that were looking to kind of make money for doing certain things. And in our case, a lot of it was watching branded videos and earning crypto for it. So we got kind of the crypto hunter crowd, the early adopters. And now, as we look more towards the advertiser side of the two-sided marketplace and onboarding advertisers, that's going to kind of dictate how our user base sort of grows, because it'll be fans of the brands that then become our users. So we're kind of shifting more towards like tier 1 countries, whether that's Western Europe or United States, North America. Where we started was APAC in some of those regions, the early adopters. And so, but that's kind of a shift for us, is that we're now focused more on the advertiser supply, because we actually have our platform actually delivers ads in the open web. So we don't actually need, a strong, several million user base in order to deliver ads on the open web through our retargeting from, as users opt into these brands. We can find them throughout, on Forbes.com or CNN. And so our users, which is what we initially were after, is now actually kind of pivoted towards adopting and attracting advertisers, which will then lead to the new kind of class of users.
Awesome. Arie, how's your users?
For us, yeah, it's kind of similar to most of the startups out there who've done crypto. You kind of start off with the early enthusiasts who are very tech savvy, and they're kind of very knowledgeable about crypto. And as that grows, they start talking to their friends, and you start getting more and more into the the less sophisticated crypto enthusiasts, especially ones who want to be able to get into crypto without taking much risk. And so we've really, over the last 2 years probably, with Coin, broadened our spectrum of users for Coin, and from that standpoint, the consumers. And then on the other side, kind of like you, we have a two-sided marketplace. We have the consumers of our data who purchase data or also purchase actions by users. And those are a variety of companies. We deal with mostly like Web2 companies, I would say. It's very few Web3 companies where they want to actually have a server with tokens on it and pay for it that way. So we have to facilitate the transaction from traditional fungible currency into tokens into our system, and then basically reward our users with those tokens. But the two edges of our system are our data consumers and larger companies, and then on the user side, or the consumer side, should I say, is primarily people who are they're optimizers. It's kind of the same people who would play, for example, simulation games, and they it's well, how do I play this game and maximize how much I get per hour of XYO or of Coin to be able to exchange for XYO. So it's really, a lot of it's a metagame. It's trying to figure out, and there's a lot of forums out there of people who are like, oh, if you do this and that, and you kind of do your different builds or your different stacks of techniques of how to actually maximize it. So people who are into optimization games really, I think, are a big portion of our customers.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a pretty diverse user base, coming back from different backgrounds to different reasons for why they're getting into this space, really, and just more or less what attracts them to the space pertaining to their own needs, right? But usually Web3 has been pretty criticized for being a rough user experience. I mean, things are getting shinier, onboarding process, understanding like multi-chain gas, it could all be a whole lot. What we really want to know is how your team is approaching the user experience.
I'll let you guys kick it off this time.
Okay.
Hard problem to solve.
Yeah, so that's my answer is actually to just reiterate the question and the fact that we have to focus on that. I think that we've went out and actually acquired some people from big tech and from user experience in Web 2 or big tech that we've brought on in order to solve that problem for us, because the more elegant that we can make it, the more delightful that we can make it, the more familiar I think is really what we're after here, then the more adoption that we can see. And as I explained earlier, we're trying to attract non-crypto people, or normies, some people call them. And to do that, you have to make the experience familiar. You have to kind of cut out all the jargon and at least sort of make it simpler for a lot of folks. So not that we have that solution pinned, but what we work on, in the trenches is really figuring out how to, give people crypto when they're watching an ad on Forbes.com without it being super complicated with seed phrases and wallets and in technology and jargon that they don't understand. How do we make this more familiar? So I think that's the challenge that we all face in terms of trying to get to that mainstream adoption.
Sure, yeah. Make it less clunky, more user-friendly, less complicated, more layman's terms. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Right.
Well, one of the things we found also, obviously, like you're saying, is this is one of the big problems for Web3 right now. But one of the things we've done is really push a lot of the Web3 concepts further back in the funnel when a person uses our app. So, it's not like the first thing you do when you open up the app or open up our site that's like, oh, you have to create an account with a passcode or you have to have a wallet. You can use our system, and then later on when you want to redeem some of the virtual currency for crypto or that sort of thing, you can either, actually we just added going to Coinbase directly, which people like a lot also, so you don't even have to have a Web3 wallet. You can just say, here's my email address for Coinbase, and then we'll transfer it to your Coinbase account right from our system. So little things like that where it's a lot easier for a person to do it without even owning a wallet or having to worry about, well, what happens if I lose my keys? 'Cause we've definitely had many customers have it happens to them where they'll call support and they're, hey, I got this XYO from you guys and I can't access it anymore. And it's like, well, that's how crypto works. It's it is what it is. And actually today we just launched our XYO 2.0 protocol, which is also a big improvement over our 1.0 protocol for developers. Because we found that even getting developers involved in our network, one of the big challenges there is getting them to be able to use our SDKs and our system within a matter of minutes as opposed to hours. And we saw this in a lot of hackathons where we go to a hackathon and a person spends the first half of the hackathon just trying to configure their system and bring up all the different things they need to. And I think Ethereum actually did a pretty good job with this with like Ganache. It's like, oh, I should fire up a Ganache server, and then there, I can connect to that and make it work. So we've really focused on building some development tools where a person who's not familiar with crypto can actually use our development tools really easily. And then, it's kind of like a Scientific American article where the first paragraph is really easy to understand. You kind of just scaffold the person to more and more complexity over time. So I think making sure the person doesn't jump into the deep end of the pool right off the bat is really the key. And we've kind of done that for our consumers and for our developers.
I think it's a really good answer in the way that you're addressing things, making it so that even if you're not super good at linking together these two things, but even using something as simple as your email address to help you along that path.
Right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anything to add, Paul?
Yeah, definitely a few things to add. So there's a few things that we have definitely done to help improve user experiences. I'm going to focus on two things, and a third that is somewhat out of our control. And I'll start with that third one first, which is protocol level user experience. I think people underestimate how important it is if you're building a protocol to build user experience into it. And a lot of people think of protocols just, oh, it's just how data is transferred. It's the behind the scenes back end of Web3 and cryptocurrency. But it's incredibly important because there are things that you can do at a protocol level that hurt user experience in a way that the best UI designers from Apple and you name it, biggest companies that have the best flowing UI, buttons, UX, you name it, cannot fix if you break it at the protocol level. And there are clear examples of this already in a few different cryptocurrencies. And I don't want to name them because people will probably get upset if they are very big fans of those cryptocurrencies. But realize that that is a key piece. If you're working on a project or partner with a project that is building a protocol, ask yourself first and foremost, how can this protocol be implemented at the UI level? Start already talking to UI designers before that protocol is hardened. So by and large, we don't work on any protocols because we don't work on any right now. So we have little influence other than to try to get these protocol developers to think of what that's going to look like to the end user. Two things that we have worked on, however, which we do have control over, number one is key management. I think that's been mentioned over and over. It's easy to do key management if it's custodial. If someone else is holding your money, they are a bank, they can make it feel like a bank. It'll look like one, it'll smell like one, it'll taste like one because it is one. We're not in the world, in this industry, to build another bank with just a different currency. We're in it to make you one. And doing that is the hard part. So many companies have tried to improve on it, and we've made our stab at improving the key management process, make it such that you create just what feels like a regular set of login credentials, but that encrypts and backs up your keys. So you lose your phone, just log in on another device. There's even password recovery, automatic two-factor, just the stuff you normally hear in a standard cloud-based account. That's what we focused on since day one when we founded the company in 2014. Second, which I think is what I've been experiencing when using a lot of Dapps, and I thought this topic is about DeFi, Dapps, and whatnot, is this, hopefully I'm not offending anyone here, but I really hate the separation of the Dapp and the key manager. The thing that holds your keys versus the thing that you use to interface, that back and forth drives me nuts, right? Like, oh, okay, you need to approve to send a token to this DEX. Okay, click, sign an approval transaction. Now actually send the token to the DEX. Click, sign a transaction. I want to take out a loan. Approve the token to send, to collateralize the loan, and then actually send the token, and then actually take out a loan. And that back and forth is what drives me absolutely insane. However, I think that this is a good first step from the viewpoint of MVP, right? Not MVP, MVC. So just the minimum viable product. Just getting it out there so people can actually test the protocol. This is a good interface for making sure the protocol even has any demand. But in the end, I see user experience in a much more vertically integrated fashion, where the app that has the keys that can transact is also the app that can interface directly with the protocol. And you're not having to use a separate website versus your key manager. And the best part about that too is it actually improves security. How many people have used like a MetaMask or a Wallet Connect app? So every time you go to sign a transaction, there's a high likelihood, probably a 9 out of 10 chance, that your wallet that holds the keys doesn't actually know what it's signing. Have you ever actually looked at what MetaMask is actually asking you to sign? And did you understand what it was?
Bunch of gobbledygook.
It's a bunch of gobbledygook.
Sure.
Most of the time it says you're about to sign a transaction. Make sure you
Yeah.
trust
There's
the
buttons in here.
app that you're using to generate that transaction, which is that website. So now you have to trust two apps versus one. So future of UX, which will both be more secure and improve the experience for users, is vertically integrating the DeFi protocols, the interface with the key management app, frequently called a wallet. And fundamentally, I think that's going to improve it. And we've already seen signs of that. Like MetaMask itself integrated DEXs, so you can automatically swap between Ethereum tokens. Way better experience than going to Uniswap and then using MetaMask to sign the transaction. But that's only one step. There's many other DeFi protocols, and those protocols, hopefully the best ones that rise to the top, will get more directly integrated with apps.
Yeah, Paul, you bring up a really good point, especially in the DeFi space. DeFi is very much permission-based and having to make sure that you are in control. You know, if you did have that kind of power that you didn't know otherwise, you'd want to have somebody else to help you usher in that kind of safety or security. But on the topic of DeFi and digital ownership for that reason, a lot of assets are growing extremely fast, just regardless of the short-term price fluctuation. So my question is, what has contributed to this rise, and what do people see in DeFi that they're not really getting elsewhere?
So I think there's a number of reasons why DeFi and decentralized apps have exploded, but I think three come to mind, three big sort of pillar reasons. One of them is access. So, you know, the whole concept behind banking the unbanked, I mean, DeFi has become available to anybody with a MetaMask, for instance, or any of these wallets that interact with DeFi platforms. So access for a lot of people around the world is crucial to be able to experience, you know, banking in general. So I think that's number one. Number two is the rewards. So whether that be liquidity mining rewards or yield farming, the rewards in participating in DeFi, you know, because most cryptocurrencies are printing the money, they have rewards that they can give to build their ecosystem and their brand. These rewards are attractive to users. So not only do you have access where anybody can use, you know, MetaMask doesn't care if my name is Robert John, Bob, Bobby with an IE or whatever. It doesn't, you know, match to my ID and all this stuff. It's non-KYC'd, it's non-custodial. So therefore, it doesn't matter who I am, which serves a lot of people around the world. And then the rewards attract people. And then the last thing was, I think, is speed. So, you know, if you're trying to get money out of, you know, a centralized institution and it's a sizable amount of money, like you want to get in on a crypto trade, or there's a yield farm with 1,000,000% APY that you want to jump into, but you got to go through Coinbase, or you got to try and take money out of TD Ameritrade. Well, you're going to quickly learn how long 10 business days really feels like. You know, and once you finally get it, you know, into your MetaMask, then you can do whatever you want with it instantaneously. And so the speed with which you can, you know, get in and out of pools or send money, receive money, all of this, depending on network congestion and the gas fees, are just the quickness with which you can act upon, you know, some of these things that pop up, you know, really quickly, I think is another large reason for adoption. But those are kind of what I thought were like sort of three of the pillars that have contributed.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, those are some strong points as well. You know, you look at access, you know, just getting access to the right proper financial instruments or tools. That could be extremely difficult for a lot of people. So having the transactional layers, having go fast, a lot faster than those 10 business days, right? That could be very rewarding. We often forget about, you know, those times where we're using dial-up internet and we just think that Google loads in half a second, right? We take that for granted. So it's definitely a great pillar.
Back to the rewards thing real quick is, you know, you can stake USDC or a stable coin on something like a lending app like Voyager or Celsius for up to 10% APY. You can stake your US dollars on Chase for 0.01% APY. I mean, so it's insane the multiples that they're able to afford, again, given that they're cryptocurrencies and they can kind of, you know, create this currency and give it out to grow. So I think it's it's incredible. You can make a lot of money if you know what you're doing. You can also get burned really quickly if you don't. And even if you do know what you're doing, you can still get burned.
Yes, of course.
Well, a lot of things that I completely agree with. I think one of the interesting things is that I've learned over the last couple of decades of my career is the one thing that always is true about customers is they'll always take the path of least resistance. It's kind of like the physics of a customer. And so it doesn't really matter if you tell them, oh, this is better or that's better or whatever it is. Like, for example, we have a large majority of our people use Coinbase to cash out because it's fast, it's cheap, it costs nothing, literally. Like, there's no gas fee at all to get to Coinbase. If they have a Coinbase account, it's free to make one. Now, if they want to transfer a lot of money, becomes more, transfer $100,000 in Coinbase, they got to start asking questions, right? So it becomes more difficult, or you want to pull it out. But I think also in the DeFi case, often what happens is there's certain tokens or certain things a person wants to do. Like, as I said, like a new token that's out there, that's just not available somewhere else. And I want to be able to get this as soon as possible. I'm not going to wait for someone to list it or whatever it is. So the path of least resistance to be able to get involved in something is to go to the DeFi. And so they just choose that. But one of the problems that I've seen is that a lot of those technologies are so hard to use that, yes, it's the path of least resistance for somebody who knows what they're doing, but you ask your mom to go and say, hey, buy some of this token for me or whatever it is on this DeFi platform. Like, that's never going to happen. And so I think that the reality of this is basically to the point of making stuff easier. Previous question, where if DeFi can get easier to the point where anybody could use it, so the same as going to a bank, or actually easier than going to a bank, and potentially cheaper. But right now the cost is extremely high. Like, Uniswap transactions cost a fortune. But if Uniswap transactions cost the same, or just marginally more than zero, which is kind of what Coinbase ones are, and if they were just as fast and they don't have a centralized control and there's less observation of it by authorities. I think some people also like the DeFi because honestly they think that they can do it without any sort of tax payments, or they can get away with certain things, which I think is difficult because it's the ledger's public. But so there is that. But so I think there's that's one of the big appeals for it. But I really think at the end of the day, whatever's the path of least resistance for a user to get what they want is always going to be what they do.
Yeah, to your point about the gas fees on Uniswap, like, that's basically why and how Polygon was sort of born, right? Is to be a layer 2, to be efficient, bolt on to Ethereum, to affect like lots of changes for very little cost. So you can do DeFi like you do on Uniswap on the Polygon network, like super fast and super cheap. And so, but there's still resistance there because you've got a bridge over, and that Ethereum to Polygon bridge is like 3 hours oftentimes. And so, yeah, there's a lot of complication getting you to where it's fast and cheap in DeFi. And so, like we talked about early on, it's how do we make this familiar and simple so that people can enjoy these things and not be kind of put off by the fear of all the unknown.
Sure, absolutely. Anything to add?
I'm going to take one of Bobby's points and really expand on it, which is access.
Yeah.
So if you ask yourself, why was Bitcoin so revolutionary? Why was it so powerful? Why did it create hundreds of days worth of conferences every single year? And what made it unique over just digital payments? Because we've had digital money before, right? The dollar is already digital. It was access, the fact that it's permissionless. I can use it anywhere in the world with an internet connection. That was one of the biggest reasons. But if you think about Bitcoin by itself and think of the layers of the financial stack, people talk about tech stacks a lot, technology stacks, servers at the bottom level, maybe your kind of back-end application code, and then your front end on top of that, technology stack. Finance has stacks as well. And at the very, very bottom level of the stack is just basic money, right? Just store of value money. The next layer on top of that is payments, being able to send that money. And by and large, Bitcoin kind of ends at that without a few additional layers to do things like smart contracts. Ethereum introduced technology that allowed us to build the additional layers. Because if you think about it, how many of you have only done holding your money and sending and receiving it to someone else in your entire life, in your entire financial life? Chances are almost none of you. You've done something else with that money. You've taken a loan. You've traded in for some other type of an asset, whether it be a stock or a different type of a currency. Those are the layers on top. And without DeFi, those layers would end up being totally centralized. And unfortunately, some of the companies that were mentioned are exactly that. They're providing fully centralized solutions that, yes, offer you better yield when you deposit your money. They might offer trading that's cheaper, but they hold your funds and you lose all of that benefit. So DeFi allows us to retain that core benefit that Bitcoin introduced for sound money and payments, now for loans, hedging, trading, betting, decentralized prediction markets, in a way, are a piece of the financial markets. Almost every financial position you take is effectively a bet. Insurance is effectively a bet. Those can now get implemented on top of the sound money and the permissionless payment network. I think that's why why DeFi has become this perfect storm. The financial systems we have today are by and large broken. 0.01% interest is for the most part negative. Right? You lose more value in your money than you actually gain. So people are looking for better alternatives. And if you look at DeFi, DeFi pretty much always has two sides, two primary sides to participate in DeFi. One side are the enablers, which are the liquidity providers, people that take assets they own and they put it up so other people can use those assets, whether they borrow those assets or they're using them for trading as liquidity in a market-making sense. On the other side, it's someone that's then using that liquidity, such as borrowing the liquidity or using it to trade. Both have an advantage above and beyond what we have in CeFi or centralized finance. As mentioned, 4, 5, 8% return on some of these DeFi protocols if you collateralize, if you deposit liquidity. And then at the same sense, access to many different assets for trading, access to be able to take out a collateralized loan from anywhere in the world without an application. No name, no phone number, no email address. It doesn't matter who you are, how much wealth you have, as long as you can pay for the gas fees on Ethereum. Or if you don't have that much wealth, hence the other protocols such as Matic. And the beauty of that system, having the large chains with high liquidity but with high fees, is that the fees are independent of how much you are interacting with, how much value you are transferring. So with Ethereum, you're looking at a few $100s in fees, if not 1,000, in order to take out a loan on Aave. But they have liquidity that could support $1 million, $2, $3, $4 million loan. Sometimes even upwards of $100 million loan. And loans that high, try taking out a loan from a bank that high and only paying $200, $300 in fees. And at that same point, if you're looking for taking out a loan or trading a small amount, such as maybe $1,000, $5,000, you have the other chains where liquidity is low, so there's not as much money there to be used, but you're not trying to use as much. And where the fees are significantly low, where they become a very small percentage of how much you're transacting. So while people criticize, oh my God, DeFi costs a lot, sure it does, where you're trying to use a lot of money. And where you don't need to use a lot of money, it's significantly cheaper. So it actually caters to the full spectrum of the market.
I think one big thing also we kind of missed in all of our answers is that the programmatic arbitrage is really the thing which drove DeFi to a large degree. Because where else do you have a situation where you can have 1,000 different pairs and exchanges that you can programmatically go and swap? So basically you have 1,000 different tokens on, say, a couple dozen different exchanges, and then you can trade between all those, and the arbitrage opportunities are instant, right? If you try and do an arbitrage opportunity for like a currency exchange between like the US dollar to say pound to euro to rand back to US dollar, like it'll take you 4 days to make that circle, and basically you've lost your arbitrage opportunity at that point. So the immediate arbitrage programmatic results you can get from DeFi is what I think is what really skyrocketed it, because that's also what drives the gas prices so much, because people are willing to say they're going to make $10,000 off this arbitrage opportunity. If they pay $5,000 in gas to be the first guy to get there, that's fine. They still make $5,000. And so to me, the one and only thing that really is the answer to what's driving DeFi is programmatic arbitrage.
You guys all bring up some great points, especially getting to the reasons for why we're transferring over from traditional finance into decentralized finance, and maybe often taking on a larger bit of risk in order to interact with these protocols with the benefits to match, right? But that is a very strong point. You look at Sam Bankman-Fried with Alameda Research and how he was arbitraging and how he made his fortunes today, right?
Yeah, they bring up the volume numbers for sure.
what percent of the volume do you think they are? Like 60%, 80%? Like it's gotta be.
Well, between them and whales, I mean, you're basically, we're just the little guys that, getting dumped on.
Switching gears just a little bit, taking it back towards the community aspect of things. I really kind of had an interesting talk with some of the other people in DeFi, and we've all kind of understood that what defines a decentralized community may not mean the same thing to everybody. So I really want to ask you, gentlemen, is what defines a decentralized community to you? What does it mean to be a part of one, and why are they important?
Paul?
Feel free to take it away.
I'm going
It's
to
a tough question.
I'll be the dick in the room and say I don't think there's such a thing as a decentralized community, especially from the viewpoint of like what crypto introduced. Because community is community. All right, we've had the internet for a long time, so the internet allowed us to have a community that was at least geographically dispersed. So what makes that quote unquote decentralized? Sure, people might be in different locations, and maybe we have virtual events, and maybe we have some in-person events. I honestly hate the word decentralized. I rarely use it because I fundamentally think it's ill-defined. I don't know when something has crossed the barrier, crossed that line in the sand that says, oh, you're decentralized or you're not. And it's actually the cause of probably most of the debates in the cryptocurrency world is because one side will say, it's decentralized. Others will say, no, it's not. Well, it is because of this, so it's not because of this. So I honestly hate that word, and I just love community, right? And we're big on community. I like the fact that we're bringing a lot of people here. This is why we hold these events at Edge. We invite people to come together. In I hate to say the bad word, but in a centralized place, right? Now there can be multiple of these places, and there's what I love is that there's many different events happening now in San Diego. There used to be one event maybe once per every couple of months. Now I'm seeing, I think I got a notification. There's one I think next Monday, and there's another one, a couple weeks from now. And so, decentralized, I don't give a damn. The fact that we have community, people are coming together, they're interested in common ideas and thoughts. That's all that matters.
It's an awesome point. That's why I bring up the word decentralized community, because everybody has a different definition. And I totally can see coming from the community where it could be that kind of like trigger word where it's like, well, we're all a community regardless if we are decentralized or not. It could mean something of interacting with a decentralized application, or maybe just people who don't speak the same language, but we all interact with the same protocol, right? What would it mean to you guys?
Well, I think one of the points I completely agree with on there is that decentralization as such is a myth in many cases. A lot of people are like, oh, this is decentralized, that's decentralized. But I would argue that Bitcoin at this point is the only decentralized network that exists, because it's the only one that's really in a situation where there's no one party which can actually take it over and dominate it. They can even argue that the mining cabals are probably big enough to potentially even control it, and they have say or sway over the protocol. Ethereum is close to that probably, but beyond those two, like the concept of decentralization actually doesn't really exist. You have DAOs and you have those sorts of things, but I would argue that like actually achieving decentralization is practically impossible, short of being almost like by definition the only people who can be decentralized are the largest ones. If you're not the largest, you can't be decentralized because now you're takeoverable basically. Especially with hash rates and those sorts of things. Because if I start off a new network right now with a hash-based algorithm, there's plenty of people out there who have enough hash rate to be able to just completely dominate my network. And you can do the stake thing, but you end up like EOS where the the stake is very concentrated there as well. So now is that really decentralized? So I would argue that everyone loves the idea of decentralization. I do too. Like I'm a big fan of it, but the reality of actually achieving decentralization is really, really difficult. And so I think it's almost more of a goal than it is a current state.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to argue. I don't think that. I think it's more of a myth, like these guys have said, and I think has some applications. So DAOs, like the Constitution DAO, they wanted to buy a Constitution. And it was the sort of the ownership of that was based on the amount of ETH that you put in to buy the Constitution, if I'm getting that right. And so I think that's great. I think you can have like sort of DAOs that have one particular mission and everyone sort of rallies around that. But I think as it relates to what we do, we kind of have to steer the ship, right? Like we can't let the community just kind of decide what we do with our product and how we develop and grow. But I think there's some aspects of community driven that I think that we like to see, and I think the projects and a lot of Kevin knows that I'm in a lot of NFT projects too, and what I see from a lot of those is there's so much and even like DeFi projects and stuff. Like, I was in Looks recently. I was seeing what they were doing, and there's a lot of volunteer moderators that are in there. Among a lot of these other sort of protocols in these NFT projects, there's a lot of volunteer mods that are doing it out of sort of the mission-driven nature of why they're there. So they're happy to be there. They're happy to provide content and support. And I think that sort of ethos-driven community membership, I think, is what you really want. Now, taking it to the extreme of calling yourself decentralized community, for us is not really a goal. But I think there's some aspects to, you want everybody in the room to win, right? Like you don't want this to be in a, authoritarian type of situation where everyone's working for you. You want, and that's kind of why we're in this space, right? We want to encourage people for us, it's to make money from their own data, their most valuable asset. And so we want to enable them to do that and then come into the community and contribute. And in a lot of cases in these discords, you can earn for contributing. You can get tipped in crypto. And so there's a lot of ways where you can kind of, Reddit is a great example of sort of user-generated community that is, in a sense, can be considered decentralized from, what the main organization is doing and up to. And the best crypto projects have the best communities that are, very loud and vocal, and that's really what we're after.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as far as like bringing things back to like the benefits of blockchain, we all kind of like have this really good grasp on, what it brings to us, what it means to us, how we can empower our friends, our family, people that we talk to. As far as like reclaiming your digital identity, but there are still many of us globally that have not really heard about our industry or have had a chance to kind of research what we're doing here today. So I guess kind of just to kind of close things off, if you did have the world's ear on the other side of this microphone, what would you tell the people? What would you say to them?
About crypto?
About the industry, the crypto, your project, how would you address the people?
Well, I'd probably say that I think for a long time, crypto has been a very speculative world, and I always talk about the semantics of things. Like there's decentralized versus distributed, and distributed is a lot different than decentralized. AWS is distributed, but it's not decentralized. And same kind of thing with crypto. People conflate crypto and blockchain, for example, and then you throw in there like snarks or zero-knowledge proofs and cryptography in general. Now you have all these different things, but they kind of just lump it all together into one thing. And I think really what people should do is they should understand these different buckets. And it's like, to me, I am actually more fascinated by cryptography and zero-knowledge proofs and things which you can do by yourself without having to have a central ledger or some sort of consensus. I think consensus is problematic in many ways. And like for example, the most simple decentralized activity you can make or do is make an address, right? I can go and make a private address and get my private address and have a key without anyone's permission. Nobody, I can write my own software to do it if I want to. I can use Edge Wallet to do it, but you don't need permission for that. But those sorts of things where I don't have to have a ledger which agrees that this is my account. I just made it. And so to me, focusing on those technologies and understanding like blockchain, the concept of having data blocks that have hashes that connect them, like that is very unrelated, in my opinion, to crypto at large. Crypto just happens to be something which is made possible by blockchain. But I think long term, the blockchain and cryptographic concepts are going to probably outstrip crypto in many ways.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just if I had the world's ear, it would just be to have an open mind, because you're not going to sort of force people into this space. I think there's going to be a time soon where this will intersect with their life. There will be an app that will have crypto rewards enabled or something to that effect. And instead of just recoiling and throwing your hands up and saying like I don't want to deal with it, it's just have an open mind to sort of learn it and see if it is for you. Because I think, we're all here because we believe that this has, as much of an impact on the world as the internet itself did, right? And I think that, we need critical mass to keep getting there. And so in order for that to happen, as things start to intersect with people that are, sort of non-crypto, is just to have an open mind and to see like, can this work for me in this particular application? Because that's how we all started, right? We got into one. Maybe we bought a little bit of Bitcoin or Ethereum, and then snowballed into these 1,000,000% APYs where we're getting things aren't working out so hot for us over there. But no, it just you gotta start small and keep an open mind is what I would hope for.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would expand on the open mind part and encourage people to try to eliminate absolutes. There's a whole lot of absolutes in the rhetoric of cryptocurrency. Things like don't trust, verify. That's a huge absolute. Try to imagine what your life would be like if you trusted nothing, and try to verify. Excuse, throw it here. If you try to verify everything you did, from how stable is the ground that you walk on, to the safety of the food that you're eating or buying, you would get nowhere. So my encouragement to those people that are listening, the 7 billion people on the other side of this microphone, is yes, eliminate absolutes, and then also ask, what is the end goal that you're looking at achieving, either for yourself or for the world, by getting involved in crypto? And then ask yourself, what's needed to get to that end goal? Because there's probably a good enough and some metric of some asset, how decentralized it is, how accessible it is, or even how centralized it is, that gets you to that end goal. And that's really what matters, is what's the end goal of all of this? What's the end goal of the product? Is it an end goal of accessibility? Is it an end goal of privacy? Is it an end goal of censorship resistance? And is it private against who? Is it secure against who? Is it censorship resistant against who? So ask yourself those questions, and then start asking, hey, is the platform I'm using, is the one that I'm promoting, is the one that I want to be involved with, achieving those goals? Who gives a damn how many nodes are on the network? Who gives a damn whether or not I trust versus verify? How much do I need to verify? Just really think about that actual end goal. And for some of you, it's number go up. That's fair. That's all right. There's a little bit of that in all of us. But if you're looking a little bit deeper, than just the number go up, you're going to have to eliminate the absolutes, because that'll basically make it where there's nothing that works. Nothing's good enough. If you uphold those very, I don't want to call it maximalist, but very absolute statements and theories, you'll never be happy.
That's sound advice. I definitely would say that I'd appreciate hearing that from you guys if I didn't know anything about crypto. So thank you so much. I did want to open it up to the audience. If you guys did have any questions for our panelists, please don't be shy. These guys are experts in the field, so I'd very much like to give you the opportunity to ask if you have anything on your mind.
Any questions?
No? You guys are experts too?
One sec.
I'm kind of a newbie, so forgive me if it's a stupid question. But as far as permission IO and the user getting rewarded for watching the ads, what's the separator between that and Brave? Maybe Brave is centralized and I just don't know that.
It's a great question. We get, that's the number one comparison that we get is, what's the difference between you and what Brave's doing? And the answer is actually in the fact that we use data and we compensate individuals for data to deliver a better ad experience. Whereas Brave is a privacy browser that essentially when you toggle on ads, you'll get served ads that are not sort of catered to you. They're not customized to your liking or whatever it is that you might enjoy in an ad experience. And so we actually use data to enrich the ad delivery mechanism so that we're giving you what you want, essentially. And also, on the other side of that coin, that actually, in turn, creates a better ROI for the advertiser, right? Which is the same reason why retargeting works for an advertiser, is because somebody's shown an interest in what they're selling, and then to see that ad again, reminding them, oh yeah, I forgot to buy that, now I'm going to buy it. It's because of that. It's because of the data behind that. So that's the key difference.
Thank you.
Something interesting that you mentioned there that made me think is there's kind of there's three things that are good that kind of conflict with each other in crypto. There's privacy, there's transparency, which is the opposite of privacy. But like you want transparency to be able to verify. Without transparency, you can't verify, right? But
Not-
we want
not
privacy.
necessarily true with ZK snarks.
Right. Well, certain things. But that's
Which you
the
were just mentioning.
yeah. That's the ultimate goal. If you can verify without actually giving up privacy. And then there's ownership also. There's like who owns the data. So like in your case, it sounds like, well, you want other people to use this data, but the fact that you don't lose control of it or ownership of it, where like Facebook, like if you look at their terms of service, once they've gotten your data, they own it actually. It's not like they're borrowing your data, or they literally own it, and they can do with it whatever they want to. So I think all three of those concepts are goals of blockchain, but to some degree, they kind of conflict with each other. They're kind of like pulling at the same thing. So the more privacy you go, the harder the transparency is, and the ownership is. So they're all three good goals, but.
Yeah, and back to another point about that is that we aim to enable individuals to kind of control their experience. So like if it is that they want to be fully private on the platform, right, they could toggle everything off. But the idea is that, if you have 10 of your favorite brands, of course you would prefer to see ads from those 10 rather than all the other junk that's out there. And not only would you enjoy that, but so would the brands, right? They're trying to cultivate these one-to-one experiences and relationships. And especially with the cookie crumbling and the fact that, we're losing this data, we're losing the ability to track and kind of retarget people. We're building sort of an opt-in mechanism for brands. And so, data is what drives these results. And so not knocking anything Brave's done. They're incredible. In a lot of ways, we mirror a lot of what they've done. We really appreciate everything that they've done. But a key sort of, fundamental to our business model is really using the data versus them, not having it.
It's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, thank you guys. I had a quick question. Been curious in crypto in more of like a long-term view. And when you look at the history of different types of innovations, part of what makes them enduring is any kind of infrastructure that's built behind it. So like with cars, there's roads. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure for cars. And with the internet, there was many, many decades of laying, fiber all around the world, which set it up for success. Is the proper way to think about crypto sort of piggybacking on top of what's already been built with the internet infrastructure, and more so at the software level and with some slick algorithms and innovations with number theory and that sort of thing? I've been curious about what those kind of signals one could look for that will signal like crypto and blockchain technology is something that's enduring and not just something that's popular today. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest sign is utility of crypto from a payments point of view. So I've long held the theory that what makes Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies hardened against attack by state level attacks. Like if a government wanted to shut down Bitcoin, what would they be able to do versus what would they not be able to do? And a lot of people would say nodes. We just got to have a whole bunch of nodes on the network. Nodes all over the place in many different places, tens of thousands of nodes, and many miners as well. So it's kind of like technological decentralization. And that's an important piece, but it doesn't really stop a country from shutting down at least their citizens from using cryptocurrency. Like they can shut down all the nodes, they can inspect all the IP packets and create an entire firewall around a country preventing Bitcoin from being transacted. And a lot of purists will say, no, you can't stop Bitcoin. Well, you can geographically stop Bitcoin within a country. You absolutely can. But the one thing you can't do is stop your own economy. So if a country is dependent on a cryptocurrency for its own economical operations, they'd be shooting themselves in the foot by stopping it. And that's probably the strongest, in my opinion, the strongest form of decentralization necessary in order to protect a cryptocurrency is utility. And like you said, we lay down all these roads, that's going to ensure that cars are going to have a long future, or any kind of vehicle that uses the roads, because we've already built all of that. In the same sense, once we see payments come through and people really utilizing it, you start using it at least for maybe large value transactions. Governments pay each other in crypto versus paying each other in gold, like settling debt. And then you start settling smaller transactions, such as property. And then before you know it, that dream of actually buying a cup of coffee left and right in any small store you see around us. Once we get to that point, then we have a stickiness that's really hard to rip out. because so much of the population is just dependent on it. It's not just they're buying crypto, hoping it'll go up in value and then selling it. They need it for just day-to-day operations. And that's the thing that I think is going to be fundamentally very difficult to displace and move. And as I'd mentioned, now you're truly censorship resistant because you'd be shooting yourself in the foot, you meaning as a leader of a country, if you try to clamp down and ban crypto.
Well, I think it's interesting also to say there's future heuristics of how you know it's taken is, if you look at the internet started off on phone lines, right? You call up and dial up and everything. Now, most phone calls you make go over the internet. So it's flipped. So now our communication channels have been purpose built for the internet, as opposed to before it was purpose built for the telephone and the internet happened to use it. Same thing with roads. We had paths all along, and then eventually we made roads that are purpose built for cars, so they can go faster and that sort of thing. So as more things are being made purpose built for crypto and for blockchain, that's when I think you start feeling that it's a little more entrenched, like making ASIC chips for hashing, for example, or what NVIDIA is making those cards. There's more and more, or even the hardware wallets, for example, there's purpose-built things that are coming around. So as that evolves, at some point, if there's fiber optics that's laid down that's purpose-built somehow for blockchain functionality, and we just happen to use it for internet also, like that would be the maximum victory at that point. It's not happening this year, but but I think watching like when are we piggybacking off of stuff which we're doing right now versus when are we actually the primary use of something and they're piggybacking off of us.
So adoption leading that kind of cart behind it of all the physical things you mentioned, like a hardware wallet or anything else that might get purposely built, like a computer or any of those things. Cool. Thank you, guys.
Good analogy.
I just had a question about, we're talking about layer 1 and layer 2. Is there a future with as I hear, a layer 3 and a layer 4? And can you guys expound upon layer 3 and layer 4 of what we're talking about here in the cryptocurrency world?
I honestly can't expand on much past layer 2. I think layer 2 has still barely been figured out. There's still a lot of issues with using a layer 2. As well, we haven't really pushed the limits of layer 1 yet. So
have you heard about layer 3? I guess.
I've heard of people mentioning the word, but it's really easy to add 1 to 2.
Sure.
2 plus 1 equals 3. Someone's going to add 1 to 3 and call it 4. I've heard of layer 4.
It'll almost certainly happen though, right? So it's like if you look at network protocols, you keep on adding different layers to the onion. So almost all technologies end up with all these different layers. How many layers we're going to need is a good question. I don't know, maybe 3 is enough, maybe 2 is enough. But having multiple layers to make things easier, like an onion on technology, is something which has happened over and over and over again in history. So there's no reason to believe that it won't be more than layer 2. But it might be completely different than what you think. It's not going to be just a faster layer 2. It might be something completely different.
That's why I'm asking if you know what might be completely different in the future.
No, I haven't heard anything about that or what it might be or what it might entail. We're working on Web 4 ourselves right now.
Web 56.
Awesome. Oh, one more.
Just to add to that a little bit. Sorry about that. So we talked about 3 and 4. You talked really about who your customer is, and I always kind of question, like, are we being primed for a one world digital currency as we speak? Are we being primed for the fact that we're going to a world that is based on crypto because it's going to solve this fiat crisis that we're in? And I'm just curious what you guys' thoughts are on that.
I would say, yeah, we're being primed for it. I mean, there's, other than scalability, which is actively being worked on, fundamentally, I do think that we can replace fiat currency with crypto. At worst case, we keep fiat payment rails and just use cryptocurrency as opposed to the dollar, the euro, the blah, blah, blah. Well, I think that fundamentally is hugely flawed in the same sense that, paper was the payment rail for gold, and then that just got unpegged. But, yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't know how to say it other than yes. We are being primed for a crypto world, and my hope is when my kid is old enough to have a bank account, there isn't one for him to have.
But isn't it more of a gold though? Because to me, like Bitcoin is gold. It's an asset. It's not really a currency as such because it's deflationary. It's the reason why we have inflationary currencies like fiat currencies is because it's actually much more efficient for an economy to have an inflationary currency. So if we basically change the rule right now and say Bitcoin is just the currency everyone uses, we'll be back in the gold standard where basically it's going to bring our economies all to a much slower growth rate. So we need to figure out how to make a non-deflationary crypto solution that basically allows us to have the benefits of an inflationary fiat currency without having fiat currency, if that makes sense.
So that's probably one of the most heavily debated topics, especially within Bitcoiners. So obviously, many people feel that you don't need you don't need an inflationary currency. And at least Bitcoin is inflationary until all of you are dead. Like we're talking over 100 plus years.
But the inflation is
120
slower
years.
and slower though. So
It's slower and slower, but it's still inflationary. And then really the biggest advantage of crypto is that you can at least know what the inflation is. It's not in the hands of a dozen people in a country to say, here's what the inflation is going to be. So that still doesn't answer the question, do you actually need an infinitely inflating currency, or can an economy operate with a deflationary currency? That's a hugely debated topic, probably one outside of the scope of this panel. Maybe have a panel entirely on that in and of itself with economic theorists. And if you think about it as well, we have had a world prior to fiat currency that was on a gold standard, and it operated just fine. And if you think about gold standard and the history of the gold standard, it was actually when gold got inflated at the time, not due to paper, but by simply having less gold in the coins, that funded a lot of, and not to try to veer into other topics, but that funded a lot of the global wars. Like Empire of Rome effectively started to dilute the gold in the coins until it collapsed, until the entire empire collapsed. So is that history repeating itself? Possibly, although at a much slower pace. Possibly, once again, a very debated topic. But even if we wanted inflationary currency, sure, program it in. Cryptocurrency is fully programmable. Put it in there and see if it competes well. Technically speaking, Ethereum is inflationary, depending on how people use it. It's kind of deflationary right now, but because of certain protocols that were added to it. But overall, we can program it, and in the end, we can still fully replace fiat currency, at least one that is completely controlled by a government with a small number of people. The economic theory behind the crypto that ends up succeeding, or those that end up succeeding, can be varied. And the nice thing is, we can set them free and see what actually works and see what people actually want.
Who determines what the levers are for that inflationary currency is the problem. They're not going to get it right the first time. If you get it wrong, it's going to go off the rails really badly. So in a perfect world, if you can get those settings perfect the first time through and have an inflationary currency, I agree with you, that would be awesome. But I don't know how practically you can do that.
The DAO.
Who affects
Decentralized communities.
Who influences all of the monetary policies of any cryptocurrency? It's those that mine it, those that use it, and anyone that has a vote on it. And while you might think that something like Bitcoin is fully hardened and will never have more than 21 million coins, and it likely won't, on a technological level, there's no reason why it couldn't.
I agree.
It could have more if everyone agreed for it to have more.
Probably should have confidence in it though.
Awesome. I think we're good on that question. We have additional questions for us that can always be answered personally by our panelists in our networking session following this. I wanted to give a huge shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for showing up tonight. We really wanted to show our appreciation to you. Without you, this would not be possible. And again, thank you so much for Edge for having us here and having this great event for us. And yeah, thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate your time.
If you guys want to hang tight, I do want to do the giveaway, and then I will also let you know what our upcoming events are. So just hang tight. It might take a second to turn on.
Oops.
I do have a crypto joke.